Is intelligence going to make Excel obsolete? Let's find out with today's special guest, Christian Torres.
Welcome to the Artificial Intelligence Podcast, where we make AI simple, practical, and accessible for small business owners and leaders. Forget the complicated tech talk or expensive consultants. This is where you'll learn how to implement AI strategies that are easy to understand and can make a big impact for your business. The Artificial Intelligence Podcast is brought to you by Fraction AIO, the trusted partner for AI digital transformation. At Fraction AIO, we help small and medium-sized businesses boost revenue by eliminating time-wasting, non-revenue generating tasks that frustrate your team. With our custom AI bots, tools, and automations, we make it easy to shift your team's focus to the tasks that matter most, driving growth and results. We guide you through a smooth, seamless transition to AI, ensuring you avoid costly mistakes and invest in the tools that truly deliver value. Don't get left behind. Let Fraction AIO help you stay ahead in today's AI-driven world. Learn more and get started at fractionaio.com.
Now, Christian, as someone who is very bad at spreadsheets, my favorite thing about AI is that I no longer have to learn all those formulas. Like the main thing I'm always typing in is it's happened yesterday. I was talking to ChatGPT. How do I remove duplicate records in a Google Sheet? If I have first name, last name in one column, how do I split those into two columns? And in the past, you had to know so many there was such an expertise required for Excel. And now I see it as you can use it without that expertise, but also the top more powerful things are possible. So I'd love to get your perspective as a pure expert.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a thing I deal with every single day. I definitely use tools like ChatGPT and Copilot to enhance the work that I do in Excel. But when I was basically given that question on whether or not Excel was going to be at risk because of the advancements in AI, I really thought about it and I said, no, it's going to actually force good data hygiene. What I mean by that is, yes, ChatGPT and any other of the tools can help you perform functions or figure out how to do things in Excel. But really what we're talking about is the concept of garbage in, garbage out. If you want a tool like ChatGPT to help you build out a robust tool in Excel, you need to basically have your data properly structured. You need to get rid of all the errors and fix some of those things up front before you even introduce that to ChatGPT. Because let's say, for example, you have data all over the place. It's not in a structured table. They're across different sheets. You don't have things properly named. And then you just ask ChatGPT, please help. I need help with a formula. Okay, it might help you with that formula, but it's way better and easier. And you're going to get so much more out of it if you actually take the time to figure out, oh, it can help me if I create a table, give it a name, and then refer to the actual column. So now you tell ChatGPT, I have an Excel workbook named Workbook 123. And on sheet 1, I have a table called products. And in that table, I have a column called like description, product ID, I have sales numbers, cost. I have all these very specific named elements in the sheet. And then you tell ChatGPT what you want it to do. And now it can actually just build the automation script. It can understand the context of what you're doing. So what I'm actually finding is that the use of AI is forcing people to be better at organizing their thoughts, organizing their data, and kind of like pre-processing it before they jump to the advanced level of trying to have ChatGPT build like a custom form.
Yeah, that brings up one of the biggest issues, which is the overhype of AI. A lot of people see AI like the enhance button in movies. Push one button, everything is enhanced. Yeah. And we're now entering this era of digital data hoarding. We transcribe every meeting and we just store them all on cloud drives. And I sometimes think about how much of the data and data centers is just trash. It's just hoarding. We store everything. And it's the same reason you see someone who's like, why do you need broken hangers? Just in case. What's the scenario right there where you need that? And you go, what's the scenario where you need a transcript from a meeting where nothing happened 17 years ago? What if? And we're so prepared for what if. And it happens every once in a while. Every once in a while, I have to go find an email from 10 years ago. But I've never had to find a transcript other than if it's a contract negotiation. Then, of course, there's a meaningful conversation, but how many of our conversations are that? So we store all of this data. And I think we have to get through this era where we think that just having data is meaningful. It's like people that buy libraries by the foot. It's like they just have tons of books behind them and it's just the spine of the book, or like just being near it makes me smarter. It's like osmosis doesn't work that way. That's like magic. So yeah. I do think you're bringing up something really important, which is that we have to start thinking about usefulness, which is now you can use an AI to help you organize your data before you analyze your data. You can't go through that process, but you still have to answer the questions and say what the data is and how you want to organize it. So even if you're not using like Excel language and you can use natural language with ChatGPT to create spreadsheets, you still have to know what the data means and what you want from it. And I think this is one of the big issues we have right now. When you have too much data, it's hard to search through. You have a massive library. You have to go, which floor of the library do I start on? It gets really complicated. And I find that this is the thing that people find least interesting, but it's the most important, which is how are you going to organize your data? What are the categories you're going to use? So important. And every time I get a new computer, I have to start off with, these are the different file folders, subfolders in my downloads folder. And then I set up rules to move videos to the videos folder, PDFs to the PDF folder. Because otherwise you just have this massive, after 2 years, 10,000 files in a single folder that are useless.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And in the world of data and management in general, when you're making data-driven decisions, there's a saying, which is, what you can't manage what you don't measure. So you can't manage what you don't measure. And that's very true. And I see that all the time. You're not going to understand your processes unless you actually collect the data. You're not going to know where things are going unless you have the numbers. But there's another perspective there. If you switch it around, why bother measuring what you don't intend to manage? And the same concept could be applied to what you're talking about with like the transcripts. Why are we collecting all of that if we're not actually going to use it? And I think that's what I find really exciting is developing workflows that take that information that's captured by some kind of meeting AI, or Otter, Read AI. There's plenty of tools out there. There's native ones within Google and Teams and things that will transcribe it for you and even give you summarized reports with action items and sentiment analysis. But what's the next step? So the next step is actually thinking about a workflow that integrates AI tools into something that has a purpose. So once that transcript is generated, then maybe the synopsis is automatically emailed to certain key stakeholders, or it like creates or suggests a future follow-up meeting, like something that triggers action, not just it goes to archive and you feel better because you recorded it.
Yeah, I think that we like to skip the planning phase. So you go, which data do you want to keep? Let's just keep everything and we'll figure out later. And I see a lot of businesses do this in a lot of areas, and it leads to different failure. It's like I see people do this. They go on a TikTok following of 500,000 people and they make no money because the audience is broad and it's a non-monetizable audience. They didn't do the planning phase first. They go, I should get followers and then I'll figure out how to make money. And then you find out, no, you have to do what you're going to do with it or what type of audience you want and who's your customer. Otherwise, you're going to waste so much time with a broad audience. And when your audience has nothing in common with each other, then no one wants to advertise with you because you don't have a specific audience. And this is what I see happening a lot, which is we go, now that we have AI and automation, we can store everything. We'll just figure out what to do with it later. And the problem is it takes so much longer. One of the biggest issues I deal with is clients will ask me to accelerate a non-existent process. So with AI, I can take a process you have and make it faster, but they'll say, we don't have a process yet. So I go, all I'm going to do is crash faster. I'm missing that critical component, like accelerating something that doesn't exist. It's two different phases, but we often skip the process design. I say it's better to design a process manually or in your life and then move it into the computer, then move it into AI, go through 3 phases. Then you're going to do a real success. But people, unfortunately, the hype of AI is so big. They go, no, I'll just push the enhance button and it will do the thing I want. And actually AI is not quite there yet. You still have to know what you want. And I wonder how often you deal with this, where people say, I just give me the data and you go, show me an example of the correct output. And they go, I don't have one. Like anytime someone says, I'll know it when I see it, I know, I go, great. It's going to cost you 3 times as much. It's going to take 3 times as long because I have to guess and keep guessing until I get lucky and create the output that you were looking for from the beginning, but that you will know it when you see it.
Yeah. I literally dealt with that exact situation yesterday. As part of my role, I help with internal tool development, and a lot of that has to do with moving, migrating, analyzing, interpreting data. And so we're undergoing a migration from one CRM to another. And essentially, I was asked the question, can you scrape all the data? Can you export and take all the data out of one and get it ready so that it can go to the next one? I said, yes, but I need to know what the proper import template looks like. I need to know what are the fields that we need. I need to know what are those processing steps, because otherwise, yes, I can just grab everything, but it gets really complex once you get into the multiple dimensions of data, because you could have data over time, you have data drilled down by certain criteria, personnel, department, etc. I need to know where this is going. I need to know the intended output, and then I can fill in the gap in between. So I often tell clients, show me where, what you have, and show me what you want. And I can figure out the magic in the middle, the Excel voodoo that will get you there. And it's a journey. Sometimes clients don't know exactly what they want, and that's fine. But I'll tell you what, the most successful projects that I've actually worked on and the most happy clients are the ones that have a process already that they're just doing manually. They're doing it very tediously. They know why they're doing it, and they know that there's value in what they're doing, but they also know that they could be doing it better and way faster. And then I come in and say, okay, so this is what a human is doing. You're doing this and this. Now I get it. What if I told you that I can take that hour and a half long process and turn it into one button that when you click it, does everything for you? And it's just, oh my God, I didn't even realize that was possible. But it's so much more exciting because what you're doing is you're accelerating something that they already know works for their business and has an intended purpose.
Yeah, this is so important. It's such a step that people are skipping in AI right now, which is that if I don't have raw input and ideal output, I can't solve for the middle of the equation, which is the formula or the process or the AI element. My favorite thing is when someone will come to me and go, yeah, I have a really complicated process. I have it completely codified. Here's all the steps. Everything's written down. Sorry for making your life so hard. I'm like, no, you're a dream client because you know what you want. It's so much harder because if you don't really know what you want, and this is why a lot of other people that are in service industries like logo designers are always mad because they go, just make it kinetic. And you're like, what does that mean? Like exciting, but not too exciting. And it's like futuristic, but not too futuristic. And you use all these really cool words that aren't visual words. And it's really challenging. What they're really saying is just keep making logos. And when you make one I like, I'll tell you. And that's an area like every logo designer deals with that. That's why it's really good to prototype with AI. So then you can go, okay, here's a rough idea of what I like. And that's so much easier because you have a sense of what you want. But this is something that's really common, which is that because people don't know what their problem is, like most people who come to me, they think it's an AI problem, but it's an automation problem or a systems problem. 10% of the time, it's AI. So rarely do I get to stretch my AI muscles because most of the time, they just have never dealt with an automation. It's almost always the data's here, we need to get it there. And what you brought up is really important, that if you don't know which data is meaningful, so I work on a product research where someone goes, I need metrics. I go, which ones? He goes, all of them. And I was like, metrics isn't a mass noun. There are so many things. I had this redirect, like a link redirector on my website for a long time, like I can make short links. So you go servemaster.com/X and servemaster.com/Y instead of a really long link. And my website was getting slower and slower. And I found out that this plugin was logging like 50 columns of data every time someone clicked a link, like what browser they were using, what time it was, what's their time zone, what was their IP address, like all this information. Like, what are you doing? I had hundreds of thousands of rows of meaningless data. And I was like, why is this even an option? Like, what person wants to know the IP address of everyone who's ever clicked a link on their website? Like, I have no idea why the data would be meaningful. And I didn't notice it for years because it takes a long time to get so much data that it starts crashing your website. And they were like, you have one table that's 20 gigabytes. I was like, what? I have 400 blog posts. And so 90% of the website was this one table, like 90% of the data I was paying for. And we have this other thing that's missing I kind of want to bring up with you, which is that we design a process, we set up an automation, and people often don't check. It's like they set up a system to create backups and they never test to see if you can actually reverse engineer and turn a backup into a live system until after you've had an emergency. And like, I'm a super paranoid person. I generate 3 backups of my websites at least once a week on 3 different tools on 3 different platforms. So one of them will hopefully work, right? So it's like the host does one, I have a third-party tool, and I have one built into the software. So we have this tendency, and I don't know if this is a Western thing only, but where we have a plan for an emergency, but we never check to see if the fire escape actually works until it's too late. And how do you deal with like systems in that place, like where there's a check element? Okay, we're storing the data here, we have this process, let's check if it's working. How do you handle that part of the process?
Yeah. So when let's say as part of the development process, when I'm building an internal tool, I often tell my colleagues, like, I want you to try to break this. Often they'll come to me and say, oh, I think I'm so sorry. I think I may have broken your spreadsheet, or I think I like found something wrong. So no, don't apologize. This is exactly what I want you to try to break this thing, because don't worry, I already have a backup and a backup of the backup. So what I sent you is one instance of this tool. Like, you can't actually break the system. You can only break that instance, that like copy that you have, because right now, before we even consider building this out into a higher level, whether it be a power app or something like built into a front end web app or something like that, a lot of the stuff that I do is essentially an MVP for something down the line. So we have a iterative process where people will say, hey, this is a very inefficient process. Can we find a tool that will fix this? Sure, no problem. I'll build it in Excel. And then that'll be the MVP product. And let's test it. Let's break it. Let's see what we like, what we don't like. Let's see what else we need to add to this thing. And then in the future, we can consider, all right, maybe this needs to be added into our actual software bundle. But when we do that, I make copies and I basically plan for failure. I assume that I'm not going to get it perfect the first time. I assume that when you're in that zone and you're programming it, you're building everything out, all the elements, connections, macros, you're human. You're going to miss something. And so I always go through that testing phase and I release it into the wild, say, go ahead, please try to break it. Because I want to find all those areas where it's going to fail. I want to know like where things are going to not work as intended. And if you just plan for that and assume it's going to happen, you're not going to get caught off guard. You're going to find way more bugs earlier in the process. And then the final product, when you get to it, whether it be like a month or two down the road, is going to be way better than if you assume it's good to go. Let's hope it works. Here we go.
Yeah, that's really critical. One thing that's happening a lot now in the AI space is that every idea is getting funded. And there's a super high failure rate for AI businesses, of course, because the hottest new thing. And there's this step that everyone skips, which is the what problem does it solve step. And as someone who's analytic and comes from an engineering mindset, this is really important to me. Every time I build a tool, it's to accelerate a process that exists or to solve a problem. But we see a lot of AI companies building stuff that's really cool. And that's awesome, but you're going to go out of business because cool, especially, when you have a ton of money, when you come, it's the heydays or the salad days, you have tons of money, you'll buy all these tools, but then you go, this isn't doing anything. This isn't boosting our revenue. This isn't making a difference. That's the first thing that gets cut. So the cool tools might last for a couple of years, but you have to really focus on these two critical components. I think that's what's really interesting about the way you build is that it's either accelerating existing process, it has a purpose that we already know is there, or it's solving a problem. So it's moving away from a bad thing and moving towards a good thing. What I see a lot of conversations I have is everyone wants to solve the wrong problem. Everyone wants an AI to handle all their social media. And I go, oh, great. How would you feel if you start talking to someone on social media, you realize it was a bot? Would you buy from that company ever again, or is it over?
Yeah.
And or they want to do AI phone calls, or they want to do, it's always things that are like super important. I say, oh, really? How often from social media do your customers know like things that are important that help you land the future product? So you're losing that channel where people let you know, hey, something's broken. Something your website's not functioning. It happens to everyone. A link breaks or there's some PHP update, something breaks. Sometimes your customers become the QA person that finds it because you tested it and then an update or a WordPress plugin or something breaks it. If you remove the ability for your customers to communicate you through a channel, the more channels you remove, the more likely you are to have a fatal error and not catch it until it's too late. So I always worry that people, and a lot of companies trying to solve like human communication. Oh, the one thing I would want to remove is talking to my customers. And I'm like, isn't that literally that's the most important part of your business? And so there's this Michael Crichton book, Airframe, and it's like even if you export the wings, you never let another company build the middle of the plane because that's the key component of your business. You build airplanes, and it's the same thing. If you send sales to an AI and have another AI building your software, you don't have a company. Once they figure out they don't need you and you're giving up the most important thing. So I can have an AI, I guess. Sometimes people think that's what this podcast is. They go, oh, it's an artificial intelligence host. No, I'm a person. It's the topic, not the mechanism. And but someone asked me that. I go, oh, that's a really interesting question because you read a word differently. I go, oh, that's insane. Nobody would watch it. Because there's a lot of tools now that will generate AI podcasts. Again, no one listens to those because it's not interesting. we don't want to listen to two robots talk to each other. That's why adults don't watch very many cartoon movies, because it's not realistic. Like, why do I care which cartoon dies in this fight? There's two cartoons fighting, they're not real. So I think that this is so important to dial into, which is that the process elements. One thing that I've seen a lot of, if you want to start a business like 30 or 40 years ago, you just wrote out a really detailed business plan, went to the bank, got a loan, they reviewed it to see if it was good enough, and then they would loan you money or not based on the quality of your plan. We don't need to do that anymore, and now nobody has a plan. So many people skip this phase, which is the how do you know you have a good idea phase. And I think it's a critical component, and it's also, it just iterates further and further down. So someone will say, oh, I want to accelerate this process. Why does this process matter? I don't know, but it might. It's like, oh, great. And that happens a lot. Like a lot of times, because we built our businesses, we haven't been fastidious along the way, which is who's your ideal customer? I can always tell when someone, the broader the answer is, like, the more trouble they are. Everyone. If we just get 1% of all humans, I'm like, 1% of all humans.
Yeah.
Name a product that 1% of all humans use. Any product for any brand, right? It's just not there. And that's what's really important. And it's like that we think that AI can solve a problem, but we're solving the wrong problem. It's the strategy component. And AI can help you strategize and help you figure out if you have a good idea, all those pieces if you do it. We're like, that's boring. Let's just do the exciting stuff. So I'm interested because there's two camps of people when it comes to spreadsheets, people that are passionate about it and people that hate it and keep no records. So what do you do when someone goes, hey, we have no records, we have no process. Here's like a login to our software. Can you just fix this for us?
So in those instances, I actually go back to my roots, which is quality management. Like I was a quality control technician and really focused in on Lean Six Sigma, lean manufacturing, things like that. And there's a framework called the DMAIC process. And the first thing you need to do is define the problem. You define the problem, then you figure out what are the things you need to measure. Then you figure out like the analysis phase, how you're going to analyze the things that you capture. Then you improve the process, and then you figure out the proper controls. So DMAIC. And that process works whether you're working on an AI tool, a spreadsheet. It could be a new business. You have to start off by defining what is the problem. And if you don't have the measurements, then that's even more important to figure out what the problem is, because when you identify what it is that you're actually trying to solve for, then you can hone in on, okay, what metrics do we either have that we're not paying attention to, or what metrics can we generate? What metric can we extract and start collecting to establish a baseline that will help us, create some kind of analysis or improvement down the road? You can't do that unless you have the measurement. You can't measure unless you know what it is you're trying to understand or fix. And so that's the process that we walk through. And to your point around AI basically shortcutting that analytical process and then people not really paying attention to the critical planning steps. We have so many instances where we'll have spreadsheets with data, and all we want to do is automate it. We want to basically say, can we create an AI that's going to just build this cool dynamic dashboard? Okay. Do you understand the data that you're asking the AI to analyze? Because if you don't have a fundamental understanding of what this data actually is supposed to represent or what good looks like, then you're going to miss the entire point. You might have a beautiful dashboard with charts showing you that things are going up and everything looks good and green and heat maps and everything. But if I ask you a question about the actual raw data, are you going to look at me like I'm crazy? Are you going to understand what these numbers actually are telling you? And that's why in analytics, you can have descriptive analytics that describe what's going on. You can have diagnostic analytics where you look at, okay, what is the source of the problem? Is there a correlation between this and this? But really, it's once you get into predictive analytics and prescriptive analytics that you start asking this question. What am I actually trying to achieve here? What am I trying to do? And what do I do once I get this variable? So the AI spits out X. Okay, is that good? Is that bad? Do I need to do something about it? Am I like, okay? Or is this like a red alert? What does it mean?
Yeah, I think that's the critical component, is that if you can't tell if the response is good or bad, or if you can't tell, then there's no point in generating it. And I thought it was funny when you said that. I was like, how many people ask for that and then they don't even know what dynamic means? So it sounds cool. So I think this is really going to help people who are thinking about AI processes, and hopefully this will help more people reach out to me out working with me is the first thing. Oh yeah, I need to know what I want and be able to describe it and to know if I've received what I'm looking for. Because if you can't tell if you've received a good output, then you're in this really, it's an impossible to solve situation. So this has been amazing, Christian. I really appreciate your time. For people who want to improve their processes, especially with numbers, especially with Excel, and realize that their numbers, their metrics, their data is not where it needs to be, where's the best place to find you and see the amazing things that you're doing online right now?
Yeah, so I've got a couple of platforms. You can always reach me on my website. So it's stark-analytics.com. Yes, Stark as in Iron Man. I'm a very big Marvel guy. People ask me like why he's my favorite hero. And I said, one, he wasn't magically gifted powers by the sun or something crazy like that. He's not an overpowered character. He literally used his brains and ingenuity to create a solution back in a cave. And what's really cool is you look at the evolution of all the different suits. That's what we do with our own systems, right? We start off with a really ugly, clunky hunk of metal, and then eventually we refine it and we make it better. So I just love that like journey. So it's Stark Analytics. And then I also have a YouTube channel called The Sheet Freak. And Sheet Freak is basically like a little bit of a customer facing sub brand where I just do short training videos to help people learn what's possible. Like I'm really at the point right now where I'm shifting away from what can I build to what can I teach? What can I empower people with? And so a lot of the stuff that I'm doing now is skills training workshops. I have an accelerator workshop where I basically cover everything from the newest features in Excel to how do you integrate AI into your process with Excel and empowering people to use these tools to do things better. Because sure, you could call me in and show me your process and I build something for you, right? I can give the person a fish, but if I teach them to fish, that's even more impactful for them and in the future. On the website has details on there. Learning channels, Sheet Freak, TikTok, Instagram, all those things. I love connecting with people and talking about this subject, nerding out on it. And yeah, I've pretty much made myself available and accessible through every channel. And it's so much fun. So much fun, like hearing the stories that people have when they embark on these journeys, things that they've built that they get excited about. And so, yes, okay, I want to work with you and I want to show you how you can take this to the next level.
That's amazing. So we'll make sure to put all those links below the video and in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here again for another amazing episode of the Artificial Intelligence Podcast.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Artificial Intelligence Podcast. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss another episode. We'll be back next Monday with more tips and strategies on how to leverage AI to grow your business and achieve better results. In the meantime, if you're curious about how AI can boost your business's revenue, head over to artificialintelligencepod.com/calculator. Use our AI revenue calculator to discover the potential impact AI can have on your bottom line. It's quick, easy, and might just change the way you think about your business. While you're there, catch up on past episodes, leave a review, and check out our socials.